All right, dear friends, with that, let's get the show on the road. Welcome to Jewpernatural, Lesson 3. This class is dedicated in loving memory of Mrs. Bernice Trogan, sponsored by the Lieb family and by the Klein family. If it's too small, don't worry. I'll make sure to fill all of you in. And here we are at Lesson 3, Jinxes and the Evil Eyes. This is probably the most superstitious. This is probably the most superstitious of all the topics that we've done so far. The idea that there could be curses that take hold on people or take hold on entities. And there's the evil eye. We have to ward off the evil eye. And it's interesting because out of all the superstitions, I feel like this one is the one that, at least in American culture, is like the most seeped in. So, for example, which American will you not find saying, they'll say something, tap on wood. Knock on wood. Or crossing their fingers. Or in American culture, the number 13 is considered, right, like a jinx number. So these are all really weird superstitions. Like, what's wrong with the number 13? When Mushka and I first got married, we lived in an apartment in Crown Heights, 520 Crown Street. And we had apartment 13A. There was no 13B, it's called 13A. Why? Because you can't just be called 13. That's what somebody decided 100 years ago when that apartment building was built.
Well, a lot of elevators, they don't have a 13th floor.
Right, there's no 13th, right? A lot of them skip 13th floor,
right.
exactly.
Leclerc Gas Building in St. Louis was like 17 floors. The 13th floor was just an open space all the way out, no wall.
Oh, really?
No nothing.
So, this is going to be today's question. Are curses real? Are jinxes real? The evil eye? And it's going to be a fascinating discussion. So, let's start with a little story. What is a classical example? I don't know how many Americans believe in it, but it's definitely a very big part of the American culture where there's a curse that took hold. Is the curse of the Chicago Cubs.
Detroit
Right?
Lions.
Against the Detroit Lions. I believe it was 19. And I'm going to tell you guys a secret. No one knows this. You guys are going to be, this is top secret information. But in 1945, the story goes, there was a guy, his name was Billy Goats. Why is he called Billy Goat? His name Billy Goat because he owned a goat. He owned a tavern in downtown Chicago. One day a goat walks into the tavern. It sounds like the setup of a joke, no? Okay, the goat walks into the tavern, and Billy Goat just decides that he's keeping the goat, and he takes as his lucky charm that he has a goat. He was called Billy Goat, and he was always there in the tavern. The goat. 1945, he is going to the World Series. The Chicago Cubs are playing against the Tigers. And he buys 2 tickets. One for Billy, one for the goat. The goat's going to the... And it was the owner of the Chicago Cubs. I believe his last name was Wrigley, Mr. Wrigley. Mr. Wrigley comes all the way down from his suite where he's watching the game, comes all the way over to Billy Goat and says, "Get this stinking goat out of my stadium." This is serious stuff. What was a goat doing here? And at first, Billy Goat thought he's kidding with him. He's like, "You serious? You kicking me out of the game?" He's like, "Yeah, get your stinking goat out of here." See, he says, "The goat doesn't stink. You stink. You're never going to win a World Series." And the story goes, since then, 1945, the Chicago Cubs, even when they had very good players, and there's all these legends online, and there's even like times where they were about to win, and like really weird stuff happened that ruined the game last minute. Like they had all the bases loaded, and they had their best guy up for batter. And right when he was supposed to go, I believe this happened in New York when they were against the Mets. A black cat came and ran right in front of the pitcher and threw him off, and it was a foul ball. And anyways, this is a bunch of different things. One time, one of the important players that was covering first base right before he went out, his energy drink bottle spilled all over his pants. Oh no, it spilled all over his mitt. And then when it was supposed to be an easy catch to get out, it fell out of the mitt. And all these things, everybody says Chicago Cubs are cursed. Until when did the curse break?
when the goat died.
No. Long after.
It was not that long ago.
It was 2016. 2016. It was the year that I got married. 2016. And people wonder what happened in 2016 that now the curse was broken. So I'll tell you. That was the year that Chabad opened up for the first time a stand by the stadium to put on tefillin with all the Jewish men in Chicago by when the Cubs were playing the World Series. And they had a big sign saying, wrap tefillin, pray for the Cubs. And you know what happened? That was when they won.
Wow.
So,
But
that's...
two more. 1945 Tigers had more to do with Hank Greenberg beating the Cubs than it had to do with the goat.
Okay.
And 2016 Cubs, the general manager who broke both the Boston curse and the Chicago curse was Theo Epstein.
So the Jews run the world, in short, right? And the weather. All right.
Baseball world.
The baseball world.
So, Rabbi,
At least that world.
What do we set up a booth at the Lions Field?
Lions can win.
You're saying to help them out. You say they could use some of our help. Okay, so this is the story.
He's Chabad the D.
This is the story. The idea is, it seems, that there's a concept in the world, and in the ancient world this was considered a very, very big superstition. Until today, even if people don't get fully behind the superstition, there is a lot of belief in the Western world of this idea that somebody could bestow a curse upon you. Somebody could say something with ill intention, and that could then go and harm you. Or there's something called the evil eye could look at you. And some people think, what does Judaism have to say about this? A lot of celebrities, a lot of Jews, this idea of wearing a red string comes from Israel. You know what I'm talking about? Where's your red string?
I threw it away last week.
Wow, okay. You're spoiling it for everybody. All right.
I thought the red string was more to do with Kabbalah than it was.
Right, so they blame it on the Kabbalah to ward off the evil eye. That's like the reason. Yeah, Kabbalah, but so the question is this legit? And really the essential question is, what is the power of our words? What is the power of our thoughts? That's really the ultimate, if we have to boil down the question. It's like they say, if a tree falls down in the forest and no one's there to witness it, did it make a sound? So my question tonight is, there's another one. If a man says something in a forest and his wife is not there to hear it, is he still wrong?
Always.
Al says he's still wrong.
Absolutely. But last week's parsha was more about words, and we learned what the Rebbe said about how words matter. And Satan's, they're out in the universe.
Oh.
And
Very good. Okay, so that's going to be our question for tonight. If I say words in a forest and no one's there to hear them, do they matter? Do words have any effect? Or are they just words? I'm just saying something. So dear friends, let us begin our journey into the world of jinxes and the evil lie in Judaism. Our journey begins on page 83. And let's start at least with the basics. Let's start from ground zero. What does Judaism believe? Does Judaism believe that there's something called that one man can curse somebody else? Does Judaism believe that one man can hurt somebody else? Simply by the power of their thought, by the evil eye? So let us start. Let's start in the Bible. We'll start doing some reading, and we'll start at least getting our foundation. So, text 2 on page 83. And Susan, would you like to begin?
Sure.
Text 2. Here we go. Straight from the Torah from Leviticus.
Two views of the eye. We begin our study.
No.
Pardon?
The actual text.
Oh,
Yeah, I know
okay.
that.
Cursing the deaf. Do not curse a deaf person.
There we go. Simple as that. Do not curse a deaf person. Let me put that up over here. Okay.
I can't hear you.
For all the lawyers here, what does it say? If you were a lawyer, it says, do not curse a deaf person. Oh, are you allowed to curse a...
Blind person?
No. It's deaf.
A
not
hearing
deaf.
person.
A hearing person? Are you allowed to curse a hearing person? Torah doesn't say no.
Doesn't say don't, right?
Okay, so all the commentaries say no. It doesn't mean that you're only not allowed to curse a deaf person. It means even a deaf person. Do not curse even a deaf person. But anybody, the idea is that this is one of the 613 commandments in the Torah. You're not allowed to curse another person. Okay. But it's very interesting. How does the Torah word it? The Torah doesn't say you're not allowed to curse anybody, no matter what. The Torah specifically teaches you this law. Do not curse, in the context of a deaf person. So that's interesting. There's something here. What is the idea behind that the prohibition of cursing is specifically taught to us within the context of a deaf person? What is the meaning to that? What is the meaning to that? Okay? Keep that question in mind. Let's read this next text. Text 3 on page 84. And I'll just tell you, this text that we're about to read comes from a very classical Jewish book. One of the earliest works that systematically go through the 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. So this is going to give us a very early idea of what is the meaning of this prohibition. Do not curse a deaf person. So Susan, I'm going to give this to you as well, because text 2 is only three words long in the Hebrew. So that's getting off too easy. Text 3, page 84.
We cannot understand the mechanism through which the curse affects its subject and how words have this power. But we know that all people, both Jews and non-Jews, take curses seriously and believe that even the curse of an ordinary person has an effect on the subject, bringing misfortune and distress. Knowing that this is the case, we can suggest that this is a reason for the transgression. Hashem is forbidding us from causing damage to others with our lips, just as he forbids us from damaging with our actions.
Oh, okay. So this text says, we don't know why, but Judaism believes that this is what the Torah says, that when you curse somebody, you actually cause damage. Okay, now let's unpack that. We all understand that when one person curses another person, there's a very understandable level of damage or hurt, which is what we call emotional hurt. You hurt somebody's feelings. When you curse somebody, no one likes being cursed. Okay. So we all understand that there's that subjective emotional pain. But the Torah specifically teaches you the law of do not curse in the context of a deaf person, to teach you no. There's a lot more here than just the subjective emotional pain of the cursee. Is that a word? Of the person being cursed, right? Because a deaf person, he's not going to be getting hurt, right? What does a deaf person say? I'm saying that if somebody curses a deaf person behind his back, he's blissfully unaware, no feelings hurt. So the Torah says, yeah, even there's a problem. You're not hurting his feelings, but damage was done here. And here we see at least the premise. I want to put that up over here. That curses cause harm to their subjects. It is a real thing in Judaism, that a curse could have an effect. If you say something negative about somebody else, you hurt them. We don't yet know why, but at least now we have an established idea, which I think is very shocking to a lot of people. Really? Judaism believes in curses? And and we're not talking about any, idea that there's my family is cursed. Like people say about the Kennedys, right? They were cursed. I don't know. We're talking simply the idea that it could bring harm. It could bring negativity to another person. That's the Jewish belief. So here we have the idea about verbal abuse, verbal curses, that there is something here. Okay, now let's go to the evil eye. The idea that even in thought, can one person damage somebody even on the level of thought? So let's go to this next text, and Max will give it to you. Text 5, page 86, from the Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot. Again, a very classical source. So Max, take it away.
Rabbi Yehoshua said, an evil eye, the evil inclination, and the hatred of one's fellows drive a person from the world.
Okay, there are 3 forces that could drive a person out of this world. Evil eye. Oh, there we see it. Evil eye. There's something called the evil eye. The evil inclination. What's the evil inclination? The inclination, the animalistic drive to simply fulfill our lusts, our desires, our short vision, short-sighted decisions and wants and desires. And we all know that if that drive is left unchecked, it destroys people. It happens in the news. Like around once a week, you usually hear about such stories, no? Where you could simply see somebody's evil inclination literally drove them off the deep end. And the third one is the hatred of one's fellow. People who are driven by hate and just can't control a hate that they have to somebody else, it destroys them. It destroys their life. People will allow for no good reason somebody to destroy their life simply because, out of hatred. But then there's something called here an evil eye, and there we see it. This is the Jewish source. There's something called an evil eye. Ayin hara. There's an evil eye. What does evil eye mean? An evil eye has the power to, in the words of the Mishnah, drive a person from this world. So what is this? So let's read next text. Next text from a classic commentary on the Mishnah. Next, read this one as well. Text 6 on page 86.
Maimonides explains that the evil eye means greediness. Being greedy can drive people from this world because obsessive pursuit of wealth can lead people to place themselves in dangerous circumstances. I disagree with this explanation. The Talmudic definition of evil eye is well known. It refers to looking at a fellow's property with jealousy or hatred, which causes material damage to the person and their property.
Okay, so we have the first initial explanation, which means greediness. That could be one form of evil eye. But the main definition of evil eye is somebody who looks at their friend, sees their blessings, sees their successes, sees the goodness that they have, and simply can't handle it. They're jealous, they're resentful. There's a Yiddish word for this. It's called to fargin. Farginen. And there's no good English translation. It's a very powerful word because it's a very rich word. And there's no good English translation. You use it in this context. I can't fargin you. Which means I can't handle you. Farginen. Is it German? Also?
In German is a similar word, yeah. It's if you don't, there is no word. If you don't want anybody else to have something.
Right. Which means it's not like somebody took something away from you. And it's not even that somebody has the thing that you can't have. You have it too. Farginen means it's totally irrational. I've got the same thing. I could afford what you did. But I'm seeing you having a good time, and now I'm in a bad mood. I just simply can't handle you doing it. Which is a very, very real human weakness. It's because it's so irrational. But we all know that we have it inside of us. Sometimes we just can't fargin, and it takes work to actively allow ourselves to fargin. I'm happy for you. It's okay. You're allowed to have your blessings in life, and it doesn't bother me. That's called ayin hara. Evil eye. When one person looks at somebody else, and they just can't fargin. There's this jealousy, there's this hatred, there's this resentment. I just can't handle that you're having a good life. And it's not even jealousy that I want what you have. It's just, I just can't handle your good life. Even on that basic level. And this text says unbelievable words. It causes material damage to the person and their property. Unbelievable thing. One person, simply in thought, thinks negatively about somebody else, and they could cause them damage, physical damage. So we see over here the idea that in Judaism, this superstition is not a superstition, it's very real in Judaism. Evil speech, a curse, and the evil eye, through thought, both have the power for that one human can cause damage to the other human. Okay, so here we have that established. Yes, Julie?
I was just curious, how does karma fit into this?
Karma is not a Jewish idea.
It's not at all?
No.
Okay.
Because karma assumes karma is not God-based. Karma is the philosophy that nature itself pays back. The philosophy of karma is not, and in Judaism it's not that case. Also, karma says that it has to happen in this lifetime. It's not Jewish karma, but
Is it kind of like,
I don't think so. There's just the idea that, forget about karma, that you've done something. Simply the idea that one human speaks negatively or thinks negatively about somebody else, you could cause harm. So, which is a pretty wild thing. So we have these two forms, speech and thought, but they're really one category. In Judaism, we classically call this with these Hebrew words, ayin hara. Ayin hara means the evil eye, and this is the Hebrew term that refers to evil speech and evil thought, evil eye. It's all using this term. It's one term for ayin hara. And this is something which we find all throughout the Bible. If you take a look at page 88 and page 89 of the spread over here. I'm not going to go through these examples, but here we see that there's clear references in the Torah, in the narratives of the Bible, to the ayin hara, the evil eye, being a force within these biblical narratives. And just take a look at page 90 here are a few Jewish practices and Jewish law that we do certain things as Jews, and the reason why we do it is to avoid the ayin hara. So number one, we never count Jews. Unbelievable idea. I don't know if you've ever seen that traditionally Jews are never counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We say not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. You ever saw that before?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you count, right? It's not.
For a minion.
For a many, in general, you never count Jews. And it's there in the Torah. It's a story in the prophets that King David was warned. And even all the counts in the Torah was always done through a proxy. Get every Jew to give a coin, and then you'll count the coins. You never count Jews directly. And this idea not to bring upon the Jewish people the evil eye. Another interesting thing is that according to Jewish tradition, it's just something that developed. When you're counting for a minyan, so you don't count directly, 1, 2, 3. So in Jewish tradition, I don't know where it started, is that you use a 10-worded verse. And that's how you count. So the verse that's used is a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim, a beautiful verse. And you count, Hoshia, Es, Amecha, Uvare, Ches, Nachlasecha, Urim, Venasim, Ad Ha'olam. Oh, we got a minyan. If you get to Ha'olam, you have a minyan. Because the verse itself has 10 words. Now the meaning of the verse is that God is going to save his people, God's going to help his people, God's going to bless his people. So it's a beautiful verse. You're counting people, you're showering them with blessings. It's a beautiful idea. So you don't take some. If you want, you could also use the blessing of Hamotzi. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Hamotzi lachem min haaretz. That's 10 words. But that's like meaningless. Hoshia Samecha is blessing the people. So the idea is you don't count people directly. Why? Not to bring the evil eye. The other one, if you look over here on the right, on the top right, that that it is improper to call up two siblings or a father and a son to the Torah. Somebody's phone is making noise over here. Is somebody on the table? I thought I was on the table. Okay. All right. You don't call up two siblings to the Torah at once, or a father and a son, to not draw too much attention to them, so like that there's no evil eye. So we see that it's really part of Jewish tradition. This is a force that influences Jewish law, Jewish tradition. And the most famous place, the most ubiquitous place where we see this idea, the reference to the evil eye, is when we say Cain, Ayin, Hara. You ever heard that one before? Cain, Ayin, Hara. What does that mean, Cain, Ayin, Hara? It's 3 different words. It's Cain, Ayin, Hara. But in America, it turns like one long thing. Cain, Ayin, Hara. Cain, Hara. Cain, Hara. I was once driving in Brooklyn, and there's a 12-passenger van, a family van with 12 passengers. And the license plate was a K, a 9, and then it said Hora. And it was a reference to, we've got the big family, Kenina Hora. So where does it come from? It's this idea. Let's read the next text, text 7. This is a part of Jewish law. So Al, where about you? Text 7, page 91.
When people commend the wisdom, wealth, family, etc. of others, they must bless them that they not be affected by the evil eye.
You see that? Beautiful. That whenever we're highlighting and focusing on somebody's blessings, their wealth, the goodness in their life, it's a blessing. Yeah, we're focusing on the good that you have, kin ayin hara. There should be no evil eye. Or in the Hebrew, it's beli ayin hara. All right, and the Sephardim have their own way of saying it a little bit differently. So this is the idea. Kin ayin hara is all part of it. But what we have right now is the established fact that Judaism believes in the evil eye. But this is what I want to ask you right now. What we want to know are these 2 questions. What does that mean? That I think something or I say something and I'm damaging you. How does that happen? These are going to be the questions. How is the damage caused by an ayin hara? How does that work? That with an ayin hara, I'll be using that Hebrew word throughout the rest of today's class. The evil eye, what does that mean it causes damage? What type of damage does it cause? And how does the ayin hara causes damage? What is the mechanics? What's the science over here? How does it work? How does the ayin hara cause damage to somebody else? It makes no sense. That's the question. Any Any suggestions?
Some people could get so jealous that they would be apt to do damage.
We're not saying that you will do damage. The speech
That's
itself
an
causes
act.
damage.
Not-
Yes, Larry.
The words cut sharper, the tongue cut sharper with the words
Oh, so you're saying, but no, but you're going back to.
than the sword.
Oh, you're right. As the famous line says, I don't remember the line, right?
The
You
pen
could
is-
throw
the
sticks
pen
and
is-
stones. Oh, what was that one you're gonna
The
say?
pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
The pen is mightier than the sword, which is true.
Yes.
Which is true. But at the end of the day, that's emotional damage. What we've established before is that there's material damage, practical, real, concrete damage. It's not only in the words of feelings. There's real damage that's caused over here. What's the damage?
Well,
Does it have anything to do with what we do here is reflected from what God does above?
Oh, see, Joey's a scholar.
I'm not a scholar.
No, he's
You
a
just
real
taught me
scholar.
to think this way.
Joey's onto something. You know, dear friends, I want to share with you 3 ideas. 3, and they're not different answers. They're 3 different perspectives or 3 different dimensions to understanding the mechanics behind the evil eye. Each one's going to be deeper than the other. The third one's going to be pretty deep. So let's see if we get there. But God willing, it'll work. The first, very, very basic point. You know, we want to try to understand the damage of the evil eye. The first point to know, the most elementary point, is that beyond damaging the other person, it first and foremost causes a lot of damage to you. And let's read that here. I want to go back to text 4. Text 4, page 85. And Maimonides establishes this, that before we go anywhere else, we have to first realize that the damage here is not only to the other party, you are actively damaging yourself. Linda, let's read this. Text 4 on page 85.
One may have thought that the reason we are forbidden from cursing our fellows is because when they hear the curse, they will be pained and distressed. According to this logic, cursing deaf people should not be forbidden because they will never hear the curse and be distressed by it. The Torah, however, disabuses us of this notion and cautions us that cursing deaf people is also forbidden. The reason for this prohibition is that the Torah is not only concerned with the feelings of the subjects of the curse, but with the character of the cursor as well. We are cautioned not to incite ourselves to revenge or accustom ourselves to express anger.
There you have it. The very first thing is that what happens to you? What happens if we let ourselves curse people? Even if they don't hear it. Even if we're not hurting their feelings. But what's happening to us? When we allow ourselves to think things, our thought and our speech are activators. We all know this. The more we think about something exciting, the more actually, viscerally excited we get. The more we speak about it, the more excited we get. And when we're upset about something, the more we think about it, the more upset we get. The more we speak about it, the more upset we get as well. So if we are jealous of somebody, or we're upset at somebody, and we start allowing ourselves to think about it, we start allowing ourselves to talk about it, we're just bringing that negativity and giving it more permanence and more of a stamp and more of a presence in our life. And it's training the unhealthy parts of us to manifest. Instead of us being in self-control and always saying, no, it's not healthy to think this, let's avoid it. Let's always look for the positive. These are muscles you have to train. And if your mind automatically goes to right away being jealous and resentful and angry and cursing, it makes you into a worse person. You are causing damage to your own psyche. So Maimonides says before we go to the damage you cause anybody else, we have to first acknowledge the damage that we are doing to ourselves. So let me put that up over here. The first explanation is personal damage. Forget about what you're doing to somebody else. You just brought out the negativity within you and you are allowing it to take center stage. That's number one. You're giving this virus of negativity more of a presence within your body. Okay. An important point, but it doesn't really answer our question. The idea that we could cause damage to somebody else. That's what we're really trying to get to. that we could cause damage to somebody else.
Well, I mean, last week again,
Yeah.
when we were learning about Imor was that, Lashon Hara, 3 people died.
That's right.
The speaker, the hearer, and the person they were speaking about. So,
Right. So the Lashon Hara, evil gossip, damages also. Right.
right,
How does it damage? But Lashon Hara comes into this because the idea of speaking negatively.
right.
So what does it mean that we can actually cause damage? So, dear friends, it's a little bit of a deep idea. From our perspective, us as humans, as physical humans, the more tangible something is, the more real it is. Right? Reality is based on our 5 senses. The more I could touch it, the more I could see it, the more I could smell it, the more I could hear it. That makes it real. The harder it is for us to buy into its realism. So, in human expression, in the world of human behaviors, there are 3 mediums, there are 3 ways how humans express themselves. There's our actions, we do things, that's a behavior. There is our speech, and there's our thoughts. To us, actions matter most. If you do an action, it's real. Speech is a lot less consequential. Okay, you say something. Okay, it's not nothing, right? Like you said before, the pen is sharper than the sword. It has power, but a lot less power, right? For example, if I tell somebody, I'm thinking of going to rob a bank. Okay, I said it. It's very different than actually going to robbing a bank. One is just some words, doesn't add up to much. Words are cheap. And then one is an action. And then thought is even less consequential. It's even less real. Oh, just somebody thought it? He didn't even say it to anybody. So, from our perspective, action, that's real. For example, if I punch somebody, that's bad. That's real damage. If I say I want to punch somebody, okay, then it's just speech. But you said it. And if I only thought it, then it's even less. From a spiritual perspective, it's exactly the opposite. Jewish spirituality says that thought is very powerful. Words are very powerful. The same way that we see clearly that our actions have a real effect, the same is true spiritually. Our words have a very, very real effect. They're not nothing. They have an actual, real life, real world impact. Same thing with our thoughts. From a spiritual perspective, the strongest force that the human has is their thoughts, unbelievably, which is very hard for us to relate to, because for us, thoughts are just thoughts. Jesus says exactly the opposite. Thoughts are most important. Thoughts have the most impact on our lives. After that is speech. The lowest, from a spiritual perspective, the least consequential thing is our actions. It's pretty amazing. So Jewish spirituality says, you say something, you curse somebody, you think negatively about somebody, you think you've done nothing. I just said something. They didn't even hear me, so there's no emotional damage. Judaism comes along and says, no, you've done something really bad here. You've actually just done damage. Damage has been done here. If you punch somebody in the face, damage was done here. You curse somebody, that is the level of damage. From a spiritual perspective, it's much more damaging than a punch in the nose. Something happened here. Something very real happened over here. The way Jewish mysticism explains it is like this. How did God create the world?
Words.
By words. He spoke it.
Tell me
God
the
said,
words.
let there be light, then there was light. God didn't do the world. God didn't make the world. God spoke the world into existence. We were created in the image of God. We create with our words as well. In Kabbalah, words are the code word for words in Kabbalah is like stones. You're building buildings. You build a city. Every word that we say is another brick in our city. What are we building with our words? And this idea that we literally bring negativity into this world via our mouth. We bring negativity into this world via our thoughts. And from a Jewish perspective, this is not some cute idea. It's very real. I want to tell you 2 stories. One is, they're both very powerful stories, but one in a certain way to me is even more powerful. Okay. This is a story that's about 200 years old. Maybe a drop less. In the 1800s, I believe the early 1800s, maybe more like the mid 1800s, there was a great rabbi. He was a chief rabbi of, I believe, Pressburg. Where's Pressburg? In
Germany.
In Germany?
Or it's in
No.
Bohemia, Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, Czechoslovakia. Yeah, Bratislava. Yeah. There was a great rabbi. His name was Rabbi Moshe Sofer, the Chassam Sofer. He was the greatest rabbinic authority of his times. All the big questions came to him, which means in those times, every single city had a chief rabbi. But very few are well known as much as the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer published his writings on halacha, Jewish law. A very influential rabbi, the Chassam Sofer, Rabbi Moshe Sofer. In the times of Rabbi Moshe Sofer, not in his town, not in Pressburg, a baby was born, a Jewish baby boy. And he was very ill. They saw right away, this baby is not going to make it. And they had a question. Should we circumcise this boy at 8 days old? On the one hand, this baby is very sick, he's very weak. If you circumcise him on 8 days, it may kill him. Or it may hasten his death. On the other hand, the kid's going to die anyways. Let's at least give him the opportunity to have a mitzvah. Before he dies, he should enter the covenant of Abraham. Covenant with God. And the family made a whole to-do out of this. They were speaking to doctors. They were consulting with doctors and rabbis. Many rabbis were involved. And they were busy obsessing. When's the child going to die? What's of this? What are all the options? And the question also came to Rabbi Moshe Sofer, to the Chassam Sofer. Eventually, what happened is the baby died. He did not get a bris. They did not circumcise the boy. But the Chassam Sofer penned a letter to his fellow rabbis, who were all involved in this case. And he writes something, it's mind-boggling. And he's writing this from the perspective of Jewish law. See, he's not writing this from like a spiritual Kabbalah perspective. This is law. He was a very legal mind. He was a rabbinic mind. He says, I want all of you to know. I know that the baby had many practical physical ailments, which, practically caused him to die. But I want you to know that the real reason why this baby died is because there was an obsession about death with him. Everyone was talking about, when's he going to die? Is he going to die? What's the thing? We're busy talking about this kid dying. We brought that energy of death upon this baby. It was inappropriate. There was too much speech, too much negativity. He says it was wrong. Even when a rabbi has to deal with a case, you have to be very, very careful with the way you speak. Don't bring the negativity in there. Unbelievable story. But here's another story. One of the great teachers who taught and advanced the importance of the spiritual effect of our speech was the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He spoke a lot about it. One time in the Baal Shem Tov's shul, one morning, they're all praying, and after prayer, the Jews are hanging around the shul. And they were in the back of the shul, there were two businessmen, two guys, and they were arguing over money. And I was getting into a heated argument, and one of the Jews just lashed out at the other Jew. He says, I wish I could, what I feel like I want to rip you to shreds like a fish. He said those words. The Baal Shem Tov right away called in all of his students. He said, I want all of you to hold each other's shoulders, form a circle, and close your eyes. So all of the students gathered in a circle, held on to each other's shoulders to form a circle, to form a link, and he came in last to complete the circle. And the second the Baal Shem Tov's hands closed the circle, all of his students all of a sudden saw a vision. They saw this Jew ripping up this other Jew to shreds like a fish with his hands. They saw the vision of one Jew literally tearing another human to pieces. And they started screaming. It was such a frightening scene. And they were scared. Maybe they said, well, did that just happen? Is that going to happen? What did we just see? And the Baal Shem Tov said, that guy just said it. But there is an actual spiritual plane of reality where what he just said actually happened. Which means speech is very real. Maybe we are too physical to appreciate it and to see it. but you are literally, whatever you say, you brought that into existence, which is what the Chassam Sofer was saying. If you talk to, it's like, so for example, what would Judaism say? You don't say, you know why we need life insurance? You don't know what could happen. Maybe you'll have a heart attack one day walking down the street. You're going to fall flat. You're going to die in the middle of, I don't know, Birmingham. No. Judah says you don't speak that way. You just say you never know what's going to happen. It's important to have life insurance. It has to be done with you don't want to bring that negative energy into reality. This is the first idea. Judaism says you curse somebody, you think negatively about somebody. I've got news for you. You're actively harming them because you've brought that energy into their existence. And the same way you punch somebody in the face, you've just done something to them, direct damage. There's direct damage from speech, there's direct damage from thought. This is the damage. This is explanation 2. We'll call this the fist theory, which is how the sages explain it. It's like literally like punching somebody. How's that any different? Now, it's a little bit harder to define, of course. Physical damage, you can go to court. There's evidence to work with, and we can incriminate you. There's incriminating evidence. In speech, it's all spiritual. So we all understand this is beyond, okay. There's a third idea here, but it's very deep. But we're going to do it anyways. But I want to warn you. The third idea is real Kabbalah, and it's a little bit difficult to understand. So I'm going to try to go through it with you. We'll take about 10 minutes to focus on it. Hopefully it will work. And if we don't fully understand it, that's okay. It's not your fault. I don't either fully understand it. And we'll try to learn a little bit together. So we have 2 ideas so far. Maimonides says, number 1, the damage is personal. You are creating, you're allowing bad stuff within you to manifest. And number 2, words have real power. They're very real. Words and thought. And there's direct impact to the person that your curse or your ayin hara is subjected to. There's a third idea. For the third idea, I want to go back to a text earlier on in our books. I'm going to turn to page 74. Page 74 in our books, text 15. This is a text that's included in last week's lesson, but we did not read it last week. I was saving it for this week. Elke, are we by you? Elke, let's read text 15 on page 74.
Okay. Hasidic elders related that when Rabbi Shneur Salman of Liadi returned from his studies with Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Metzrich, he expounded on the passage. Know that which is above you. He interpreted it to mean, know that that which is above depends on you. The spiritual worlds wait to hear a Jew discussing matters of Torah. The angels of heaven are waiting to hear us answer Baruch, Kedusha, and Amen. The earth that we step on has been waiting since creation for someone to walk on it and recite a chapter of Psalms or discuss a Torah matter with a colleague.
Know that that which is above you is from you, is dependent on you. Some people think that we're just another, how do you call it? We're just another keg in this big machine of earth. Who are we? We're just one little powerless human being in this large universe, forces of nature that are beyond our control, and we're just one little thing part of it. Judaism says the opposite. A Jew is at the center of the universe. And you should know what happens above is all in your hands. You have control over the whole world. It's a very powerful and radical idea in Jewish mysticism, in Jewish Kabbalah, that a human being ultimately has their fingers on the control board of reality. When Adam was created, it says that God blew into his nostrils a soul of God, the Spirit of God. God gave the human a little bit of himself, which means that we have the power to influence God. There's tremendous power given to the human being. When you curse somebody, you could be triggering a change in the way God relates to that person. We're going to call this the trigger effect, which is much deeper than the fist theory. Fist theory means your words have a direct effect. explanation theory is called trigger theory. You trigger consequences, negative consequences, for the person that you are cursing, or the person that you have bad thoughts about. So let's explain this to you. I'm going to give you a little bit of a general primer, very quickly, on Jewish mysticism. Generally speaking, God relates to the world in two ways, which means there's one God, but sometimes God sees the need to wear one hat, sometimes God sees the need to wear a different hat. The two modes how God relates to the universe, we'll call them God's primary attributes. One is called mercy, and one is called judgment. Mercy and judgment. Sometimes God is merciful, sometimes God is a judge. Generally speaking, God's interaction with the universe, with each of us, is called divine mercy. Divine mercy means that even if we don't deserve it, God gives us blessings. Even if we're undeserving, God has patience. God looks the other way. God chooses to ignore. And generally speaking, that is the way God relates to the universe. Our sages tell us that if God would always judge us properly, oy vey vey, we would be in bad shape. So thank God, generally speaking, the way God relates to us is like a parent. There's mercy. He's not exacting. Not everything has to be deserved. Things are allowed to be given for free sometimes. Sometimes God sees a need to go into judgment mode. When God sees that the world does need justice. It's a very important part of how God relates to the world. Sometimes justice must be served. Sometimes there is a need for God to be very exacting. I'll give you a little example. I'll give you a little example. As parents, we're generally, how do we relate to our children? With mercy, which means we give them stuff even if they didn't deserve it. Even if they drop the ball on their duties, we'll still love them and give them what they're, that's how parents are. If they did something wrong, we're happy to look the other way. We're quick to accept apologies. But what happens when your kids are getting out of hand? Too much trouble. Sometimes a parent realizes, you know what? There's a need to crack down a little bit. We have to establish order again. So a parent will sometimes switch gears a little bit. Or, sometimes there's maybe like a time of day. Like some parents are very strictly about bedtime. I'm not there yet. But thank God the kids went to bed pretty nicely tonight. But if not, I'm not that. Like in some homes, like I remember when I was a kid, I went to some friend's house. Their parents, they were like, "Whew, you don't mess with the mom and dad if it's bedtime." So they go into judgment mode. You go to bed. You don't go to bed. You're missing on something tomorrow night. You're gonna be, there's punishment. So God is the exact same thing. Humans have the power, simply by the power of the mouth and the power of their thought, to bring about divine judgment upon a person, where there's a lot more scrutiny, and if they're undeserving, blessings can be taken away, and you can cause damage by triggering this change of the general perspective that God is generally bringing the energy of mercy in his relationship with this person, and now switching over to judgment. Let's read that. Let's read in text 8, trigger theory, page 93, and Toby, we're by you. Text 8, page 93. Back to this lesson, right? No problem.
The explanation for the effect of the curse is as follows. God has great patience for all transgressors, both the righteous who transgress on occasion, as well as the wicked who transgress intentionally. This is operative at all times, aside from when God is indignant. When God's indignation is aroused, he is exacting in judgment and does not extend his characteristic patience. When people curse their fellows, this causes the cursed party's transgression to be highlighted, and God doesn't maintain his patience for them. But if the subjects of the curse have no transgression, they make them worthy of punishment. The curse will indeed be completely ineffective.
So when you curse somebody and you highlight their negativity, we have the power an unbelievable power that was given to us humans to trigger a reaction in God. And God in a certain way follows our lead. Very radical. And if you send judgment and negativity over to somebody else, even the divine energy to them is going to reflect that. And therefore could hurt them. If they're not deserving of the blessings in life, it could be taken away from them. If they're deserving of punishment, God forbid, that could happen. And this is the power of the evil eye according to Kabbalah. And there's this idea. How does that sound? Pretty deep. This is Kabbalah, where we're all of a sudden getting into the spiritual flow of the universe. Let's add another dimension to this. All right? Let's add one more dimension, which is going to give us a little bit of a deeper understanding of this idea that we could change the flow of energy, of divine energy that flows from a person, from mercy to judgment. And we'll see a lot more how this works and why this works in this next text. Text 9 from the Zohar, from the classic, authentic text of Jewish Kabbalah. Text 9, Larry, give us a read. Page 94.
God operates on two levels, concealed and revealed. The revealed level is that of worldly justice, while the concealed level is the source from which all blessings emerge. As a result, all of a person's conduct that is concealed is saturated with blessing, and all of a person's conduct that is in the open is subject to strict justice. On this level, everything is subject to the evil eye.
Oh, okay. Now we have another element over here. Mercy, God's mercy, generally flows in what the Zohar refers to on the concealed level. When things are in the reveal, when things are too open, that's when you're a lot more vulnerable to the judgment, to divine judgment. Okay, let me explain this. I'll give you an analogy. Imagine I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher of young children, elementary school age. And I tell the class, I'm giving you a test. Whoever gets over 90, I'm going to reward them with Slurpees. We're going to go to 7-Eleven. We'll get Slurpees. All right, the great American treat. Okay. There's one kid. He didn't get a 90. He got an 80. He doesn't deserve the, right? As per the rules, he's not getting a Slurpee. But I, as a teacher, I know that this kid is a great kid. He worked very hard. He did not drop the ball. And you know, he's not as gifted as the other kids, but this is not because of lack of effort. And I feel bad. This kid's not going to get rewarded. He worked harder than some of the kids who got a 95. But I can't start going and saying, okay, everybody's getting a Slurpee who got over 90, and this one kid, Josh.
Oh, but you can give the kid a 90.
Okay. So, okay, give me other ideas. So listen to this. He got an 80. I can't say he could get it because there's other kids who got an 85 who got more than him, but they don't deserve the Slurpee. They should have worked harder. So what I'll do as a teacher, I'll pull that kid over. I'll pull Josh over and say, listen, Josh, I know you worked very hard, and as a teacher, I want to recognize, I want you to know that I saw that. I can't do this publicly, but right after school, meet me by the side door, I'm going to give you a Slurpee. Now imagine I give Josh a Slurpee. He's undeserving of it according to the rules, but I give it to him anyways. And then imagine he starts running around school to Slurpee. Look at that! I only got an 80 and I still got a Slurpee. What would happen then? What would I tell him? I'll say, Josh, it's not going to work. I can't do this anymore. I wanted to give you a blessing. I wanted to give you something nice, even though you were undeserving of it, but you blew it. This is the last time it's going to happen. Kabbalah basically says that that's a little bit of a metaphor. When things are revealed, things have to be a lot more exact. Judgment. When things are concealed, when our life is hidden, the blessings could flow. There's a lot more room for what we'll call unregulated activity. The rules could be bent. So, this is what the Zohar says. When you live a public life, whatever parts of your life are in the open for everybody to see, you are making yourself vulnerable that the way God relates to you is on a more open and a more regulated level. Divine justice. which means it's not mean, it's just justice. Things are a lot more exact. Whatever is private, God relates on a concealed, and we'll call it an unregulated level. So the way it works is like this. It all works together. Whatever parts of your life are private, the evil eye cannot touch that. This is part of the Kabbalistic mechanism. This is the spiritual flow. There's divine mercy, there's divine judgment. Divine mercy generally flows on the concealed level. Whatever is private, there's a lot more room for blessings. Whatever is revealed, you make yourself vulnerable to divine judgment. The way it works like this. How God relates to you could be triggered by the ayin hara, by somebody else looking at you negatively. But where it's going to take the effect, if the ayin hara is going to take an effect, depends on you. What's your zone in life? When you put things out there in the open, you're making yourself vulnerable. That through somebody else's ayin hara, they could change the divine flow to divine justice. Which could hurt you, which could have a negative impact on you. Not necessarily. If you deserve all your blessings, it's not going to hurt you. But it makes God give another scrutiny. Like an IRS audit. The IRS only audits the people who call attention. You put it out in the open, that's when they get tipped. Only the people who buy yachts one day. Whoa, you're buying a yacht? How did you afford the yacht? No one knows how you can afford it. That's when you get the IRS audit. When things are private, that's where the blessings flow. So it's this interesting flow of cause and effect. Whatever's out in the open allows other people to see it. When other people see it, they can start being jealous and resentful, and they won't forgive, and that creates an ayin hara. And the ayin hara could change the divine flow for those parts of your life that are open to divine judgment. And this is what we call the third idea, the third explanation of the ayin hara, which we call the trigger effect, the trigger theory. Your ayin hara creates this spiritual, a cosmic a change of flow to this person. And here we see the value in Judaism of privacy. It's spiritually important things are kept privately. So there we have it. We see this idea, three different explanations, primarily two explanations of how our words have real life effects on other people. Number one, spiritually there's a direct effect. We could do physical damage. Verbal damage is real damage according to Judaism. It's a spiritual form of damage. We can't see it. We don't experience it. But it's very real. And number two, we create this spiritual trigger effect which could bring divine judgment upon the subject of our curse or the subject of our ayin hara. Okay. And over here, let's get to a very interesting practical part of it. How can we protect ourselves from the ayin hara? How do we protect ourselves? What do you say?
See, I try and live a good life, spiritual life. Try and study Torah, carry it throughout the day, and if somebody does give you the curse, it may not. It clearly won't be as bad.
Right, you're saying you do good things, and therefore you.
The curse it won't be as bad.
Right, meaning, like they all say, the IRS. This is what the government says. That if you're a good person, you have nothing to worry about from the IRS audit.
Yeah, right.
It's not fully true. It's not fully true because an audit is not fun to deal with. And besides that, we're all human. I'm saying, who has their books 100% in shape?
The auditors have to find something. Once they come, they don't.
Right. Okay. So that's not fully true. But on a spiritual level, the audits don't cost you anything. Right. They don't cost you time. So the idea is that the more merits you have, it's true. Even when there's divine judgment, you have nothing to worry about. But in Jewish tradition, especially amongst the Sephardic Jews, they actually had some interesting rituals that were in place to ward off the ayin hara. Take a look on page 96, just very interesting. There's something called over here the Hamsa. You know here the Hamsa?
Yeah.
Does anybody own the Hamsa, by the way? Is that you own? Oh, you have one. That's interesting. This is a Sephardic thing.
It's kind of getting broken.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's where'd you get that from?
We were in Israel. It was
Israel,
in Yaffo. It was an incredibly hot day. There was a store called Adina Plastilina
that had on its door written in big letters, air conditioner. And they sold
That is
all
a
sorts
smart
of-
businessman.
And they sold all sorts of charms and artworks made.
You have
of
one too, look at that.
Plastic. And,
Does yours have a hey on it? Is there the Hebrew letter hey?
I got a Magen David, and there is Hebrew writing under here. It's this thing chips away, and I have no idea what it
You
is.
don't know what it says.
M-O, it was like,
I'll take a look at it soon, but you don't have a hey, the letter hey. Okay, so generally and traditionally they had a letter hey on it. As we see over here, it's either a hand or a palm branch, by the way, like a palm branch is opening. And this has roots in Jewish tradition, especially amongst the Sephardic Jews. And then in the modern age, especially as a commercial product, the Sephardim sold it to the superstitious Ashkenazi Jews. It's not really part of Ashkenazi culture, but it is a legitimate part, especially a custom amongst the Sephardic Jews. Then there is the red string. Dear friends, Israel economy
the right to vandal.
makes a killing off of selling red yarn to a bunch of gullible American Jews that think that if you buy a red yarn outside of I don't know where, it's going to save you from who knows what. So, dear friends, number one, the red yarn is baloney. Save yourself, sell yourself those 50 shekel. And don't buy. A Chabad rabbi once told me, I love this story. Chabad rabbi once told me that he was in Israel, he was by the cave of Rachel, the tomb of Rachel, in Bethlehem. And there was an Orthodox woman, a religious woman, who was selling red strings outside. And he couldn't believe it. So he walked over to her and said, "You're selling these red strings? You believe in this stuff? You're promoting this stuff? Where's your red string?" She's like, "Oh, I don't believe in it, but this is for the Gentiles. I'm making money off the non-Jewish tourists over here." Not only that, according to Jewish tradition, we have it, it's in very old texts. This is a pagan practice. The pagans would wear red strings around their arms, around their necks, and that was a pagan practice. And once it's a pagan practice, not only is something we just don't do, it becomes forbidden. We don't touch it. And in general, any type of tradition that is connected with other religions, like knock on wood, crossing fingers, this all has religious connotations, and therefore it's not only not Jewish, it's actually forbidden by Judaism. So we have to be careful of that. That even though we have our own stuff, like we say Kainahara, and who knows what else we do, if it has pagan associations or other religious associations, there are clear prohibitions. We're not allowed to do it. It's called the prohibition is called Darkei Ho'emori, following the ways of the pagans. You're not allowed to do anything that's pagan. According to Judaism, there's even a certain haircut, which is not very popular today, so you don't have to worry about it. There's a certain haircut that it's forbidden to take that hairstyle, because this is how the pagans would give their children haircuts. The haircut was basically that they would shave straight through around the hair, and all the hair that was basically around the paya, around the corner, they would just straighten it out. So they would shave this area. It's called rounding off the corner. You know, you just make it look like, one straight line around over the ear. That's prohibited. It's a biblical one of the 6 Torah commandments. You're not allowed to give that haircut. Why? Because this is how the pagans gave haircuts. So red strings is included in that, and then there's also these other charms and amulets that you'll see over here. That is a part of also mainly the Sephardic communities, but there is actually one. I have it here in my home. There's one amulet which has on it a Psalm of Tehillim, a chapter of Psalms from King David, and the Rebbe promoted the idea that women who are in labor in the hospital and when a baby is newborn, the room should have this hung up in the room. So you see it here in the books, the Shir Hamalot, that the Shir Lamalot that the Rebbe promoted, and that's actually the one thing that we do to bring protection and to bring blessings upon this woman in labor and the newborn baby. But the main idea that Judaism tells us is like this: don't get carried away with lucky charms. Don't get carried away with amulets. At the end of the day, we have a Judaism. The Jewish program is what works for us. Let's read text 10. A woman who wrote to the Rebbe. She was in distress. She felt that the evil eye is on her case. She is the target of the evil eye. So the Rebbe writes to this woman in text 10. Where are we holding? Julie, where about you? Text 10, page 98.
If your mezuzah are kosher, and most importantly, your daily conduct is in accordance with Torah law, it is absolutely impossible for the evil eye to have any effect on you. On the most basic level, firmly resolving to align your daily conduct with the guidance of our living Torah and to observe the mitzvot about which we are told you will live with them is God's command. In addition, this is the path to receiving God's blessings in everything that you need.
There you go. So it says, number one, there are certain mitzvahs which are specifically there to give us the blessing of protection. A mezuzah has, you can look right over here, a mezuzah, so it has, on the inside of the mezuzah is written the Shema. On the outside it has 3 Hebrew letters. Shin, Daled, Yud, which is one of the names of God. God, right? But it also is an abbreviation for 3 Hebrew words. Shomer Daltot Yisrael, the guardian of the doors of Israel. The mezuzah itself is a protection. So the Rebbe says, if you have a kosher mezuzah, it's impossible for the evil eye to have any control in your life. And in general, every mitzvah gives you life and gives you merit and gives you blessings. And simply every additional mitzvah that we commit ourselves to is, so the Rebbe is calming you down and saying, don't worry, make sure you have a good mezuzah. And dear friends, as we conclude today's class, let's put this up over here. The protection in Judaism is very simple. Increase in Torah and mitzvot increases our protection from the evil eye, and especially the mitzvah of mezuzah, which is all about providing protection for us. Dear friends, I want to conclude today's class. We have 10 minutes left. On 2 final notes. 2 takeaways I want to share with you. Because if you think about today's class, we started off with a very weird, niche, out there topic. Jinxes, curses, evil eyes. I'm saying this is weird stuff to be learning about. But the more we learn, the more we realize this is very fundamental stuff. We're learning such important, basic Jewish values that are of such importance to our life. As I want to focus on 2 Jewish values. Number 1 is the Jewish value of privacy. Privacy is not just a nice thing, what we call modesty. It is a very, very core Jewish value, and it is part of what defined the Jewish people from the beginning. And this is what we see. A private life brings blessings. And I want to show this to you in an unbelievable text over here, an unbelievable story in the Torah. In the Torah, there's a story of a Gentile prophet and a sorcerer. His name was Bilam. And Bilam, he was like a sorcerer. He knew the art of witchcraft. So he had powers. And the evil king Balak of the Moabite nation hired the prophet Bilam to curse the Jews. That's the story. Bilam shows up and he has all these curses ready to bestow upon the Jews. And he can't curse the Jews. He shows up. He can't curse them. Let's read that. In the book of Numbers, in the Torah, we're going to read this in Torah in a few weeks. Text 11, page 99. David, we're by you. Let's read.
When Balaam raised his eyes and saw Israel dwelling according to his tribes, the Spirit of God rested upon him, and he proclaimed his message. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel.
Okay, he shows up, he wants to curse them, and he sees the Jews' encampment in the desert, and that's it. He just loses, and he starts blessing the Jews. And how does it begin? He says, how goodly are your tents, how goodly are your dwelling places, O Israel. And then he goes off and just doesn't stop blessing the Jews. With this verse, we actually begin our daily prayers. The first line of daily prayers is, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Now let me ask you a question. What was impressing Bilam? The Jews had nice houses? Wow, the Jews have nice houses. Is that what he was saying over here?
I think it was the opening of the tents were such that every tent had privacy from everybody else.
Bilam saw something which, surprisingly to us, surprised him. And he literally was at a loss for words just seeing the sight. He saw that the way the Jews set up their tents was that no Jew, like Susan said, no Jewish tent, no 2 openings were facing each other, which the Jews did deliberately as a sign of privacy, I don't need to look into your home. You don't need to look into my home. And that itself broke his ability to curse the Jews. You hear this? Let's read then the next text. Joey, text 12, page 100.
Balaam declared, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob," because he saw that the entrances of their tents were not aligned opposite each other, so that no one would be able to see into their fellow's tent and harm them with an evil eye. Balaam said to himself, "I cannot curse them with an evil eye, because this is something they are so particular about themselves. The evil eye cannot affect people that live privately in their tents and don't flaunt themselves publicly."
See this over here? What defined the Jewish nature, which was so radical in the ancient world. In the ancient world, there was nothing private. Even the idea, of just using the restrooms. In the ancient world, it was done publicly. Everybody watches each other doing it. Jewish laws that even on the battlefield, part of creating an encampment when the Jews need to go fight a battle is to create a space outside of earshot of the rest of the camp where the soldiers could go use the restroom. This is modesty, privacy. Life isn't open. Not everybody has to see your love, what your love life looks like. Not everybody has to see all the blessings you do. People today going to buy a new car, you do Instagram Live. Hey, look, we're going to buy a new car. What do you think we should get over here? Which BMW? Go buy a new car. Doesn't the hate? It has to be a whole public affair. You have to flaunt it. You have to brag. You have to make people feel bad. That's what happens. People see it. Some people can't afford it. Some people don't have these opportunities. Some people don't have these blessings. So you need to be in everybody's face. And Judaism says that's literally how you bring the evil eye upon you. There's a Jewish value, keep things privately. It's such a beautiful thing. I once read an article, such a fascinating article, that people share things on social media because they're looking for intimacy. I want to connect with people. I want to share them with my life. I want to share my joys. I want to share my good times. But what happens is when you share things on social media, you end up feeling used and abused. The opposite of intimacy. Very interesting. Even the people who are looking, like teenagers especially, they're looking for that intimate connection with people, and they think they'll get that by exposing themselves. Not, I'm saying physically also, but I'm saying even just what's happening in my life. Let me bring it to my inner world, and they end up feeling like a shmata. They feel used. It's the opposite of intimacy. And Jesus says we have to be so careful. Don't make people feel bad. Don't flaunt your blessings. Everything has to be done in a refined way, modest. Modesty in Judaism is not only the way we dress. It's a conduct. It's a mode of conduct. We have blessings in our life. We should thank God for it. Don't flaunt it. Don't be in everybody's face. Not everybody has to see, Anyways, I don't want to come across as giving criticism to anybody. I God forbid don't mean that. But not everybody has to see a husband and wife on top of each other. Everybody has to go into your bedroom, literally. There's a guy. He's a funny guy. He once told me that his first thing he does when he sees people, he says, "How much money do you have in your bank account?" What? He's like, "You have no problem telling me anything about your love life, but your bank account, that's what you can't tell me about?" The irony, Money is money, that's not personal, but your love life, that the whole Instagram gets a lot to see. He's like, so it was a cynical comment of his. But that's the idea. Judaism sees a very big value. Keep things private, keep things appropriate, and that creates a healthy environment, according to Kabbalah, for God to shower you with blessings. You run around telling everybody your blessings, you're making yourself vulnerable that God is going to have to come and be a little bit more exacting with you. Divine judgment. And let's read that in this next text. Susan, back at you, text 13, page 101. Let's read this from the Talmud.
Blessing is found only in a matter concealed from the eye.
Blessings can only be in a place which is concealed. Keep it private, with discretion, and the blessings could flow there. The Rebbe's mother wrote memoirs, and only recently were they published, many, many years after her passing. She kept a diary. One of the things that she writes and describes in her personal memoir that she never dreamt would be published was that when the Rebbe was born, he was a wonder child, a wunderkind, even from a very young age. I'm saying, as impressive as he was as an adult, the apple, you saw that in his young age as well. And she and her husband, the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, they decided that, we're not going to flaunt the nachas that we have from him. He's a tremendous child. My great-grandfather, Rabbi Yitzchak Dubov, he personally, this is a story that happened with him. He was a yeshiva student in the 1900s, meaning from, actual 1900s, the first decade of the 1900s, the 1900s. And he was once visiting the Ukrainian city of Nikolaev. Are you cold, by the way? You could close the door.
A little bit.
We could close the door. Let's close the door because it's getting a little bit nippy in here. He was a yeshiva student. He was visiting the town of Nikolaev, Ukraine, where the Rebbe was growing up. And he was visiting the Rebbe's father, the chief rabbi of the city, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson. And what does he see? It's a Shabbos morning. He's sitting, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson is sitting outside on the grass in front of their home. And he's teaching a mimer, a Hasidic discourse, to his 6 and 4-year-old son. The Rebbe is 6, and the Rebbe's younger brother, Label, is 4. And he's busy reading and teaching and explaining. And it's like, it's like a little bit silly, He's teaching advanced stuff to his little children. So my great-grandfather went over to the Rebbe's father and says, do they understand? So Rebbe's father said, go ahead and ask them. So he asked them. And the Rebbe told back to him verbatim, beautifully, explained to him the whole mimer that he just learned with his father. 6-year-old boy. He could, that's it was mind-blowing. He was blown away by that. Okay. 6-year-old Rebbe, They said, we were careful to not show him off, that there shouldn't be a sense of no jealousy, no evil eye, just a discretion in Judaism. But one last point, that we have to know the power of our words and the power of our thought. Till now we've been speaking about in the negative. If we could have a negative effect, if we could bring negativity into the world, how much more so that we could bring goodness and blessing and positivity into our world, into somebody else's world. When you think positively about somebody, when you bless somebody, when you say positive things about somebody, it's not just nice to say something and to bless somebody. You are actively bringing goodness into their world. And same thing in our life. When something, especially, if something bad is happening, don't focus on the negative, focus on the good. Speak about the good. Bring out the good potential. Create goodness in your life. And there's a Hasidic line. Okay, let's put it. Right, takeaway 1 is the value of privacy. As we see in the verse, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. Privacy allows blessings to flow into your life and protects from the evil eye. Takeaway 2 is the power of our thoughts and words. We have to remember the power, the potency of our words. I want to teach you a Hasidic saying. And then we're going to conclude today's class with a little video. This is Yiddish. Tracht gut, wird sein gut. Which means, think good and it will be good. This was a saying of the Chabad Rebbes, and they would always tell people, you're going through a hard time, it's not just nice, it's not just good psychology. Hey, think positively, it makes you feel better. This is reality. Your thoughts are creating your reality. When you speak, you're creating reality. Look at people good. Bless people. Let's read 2 texts, and then I'm going to conclude with showing you a little video. Okay? Let's read text 15. Max, page 103. Text 15.
When you look at your fellows with a good eye, you give them blessings, and you also receive blessings yourself. The verse states, a person who has a generous eye will be blessed. And using alternate vocalization, this can also be read as will bless.
You look at people positively, you're blessed. You bless other people, it's very real. And one more text on text 16, page 106, Al, what about you?
Okay. The Baal Shem Tov taught that a blessing given by a close friend is more influential in heaven and more likely to achieve its desired effect than the angel Michael's intercessions and pleas for mercy.
There's nothing more powerful in this universe than the words of your mouth. When you bless somebody, when you think positively about somebody, it's the greatest spiritual force that could exist. So let's take advantage of this unbelievable power that we all possess, the power of our speech, to bless each other, bless another Jew. And we should never underestimate the power that we have to literally, actually, tangibly bring goodness to ourselves and to other people. And with that, let's watch a beautiful little video.
In der Nebesten, mit Zutake, bederach hatewe, was mit Afton, mit Gia Kapecho, mit de Gashmitike Evri. Aber hat nicht keine Teiges, warum der Ebester 4 Tonnen mit dem und mit jeder Prat von seinem Leben und seiner Familie.
In 1951, my youngest sister, Amina, she wasn't quite 2 years old. My mother brought boiling water up into the bathroom. She ran downstairs and she came up. Amina was in that boiling water, in that big pail of boiling water. They took her to the sick children's hospital. They said the kidneys may have burned through. The heart may give out from the stress. And the lungs were also compromised. It was Thursday. They said she's not going to live the day. My father turned to his brother-in-law, Rabbi Chodakov, and asked him to speak to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, make a Kiddush this Shabbos and things will be all right. Nobody felt like making a Kiddush. It was a very, very strange thing.
Ja, du, die Teile, was wird einmal gebracht im Namen von Baal Shem Tov, und einmal im Namen von dem Magi, und einmal im Namen von dem alten Reben, Adam, alle Meile. I das Mimoch, durch was mit Pravet, das Simcha Gdela Lemato, Mimoch, is das Bild, das Simcha Gdela Lemeile. Und von dort wird das Nimschach, in Inyonim הכי גשמי והכי פשוטים ובלושן וסקלו דעלה ברוכס עם בונה חי ומזיין רביך.
And they drank and they ate and they danced and they jumped on the tables and they jumped on the chairs. I think one table got broken. The doctors didn't think she would survive Friday. But ultimately, the Rebbe was right. She was able to really recuperate. The doctors couldn't believe what happened. Everybody was amazed.
ביום אחד אני מקבל מכתב מהבית, שאבא קיבל התקפת לב, והוא במצב אנוש. אני מקבל מכתב כזה, מה אני צריך לחשוב? ומה, כן, אז אני הכנסתי מכתב לרבי, כבר אינני יודע מה לחשוב. אז הרבי לקח את המכתב הזה, עשה קו מתחת למילים האלה, הוא כותב, ולפלא, 3 סימני קריאה ככה. אתה רואה את העוצמה שבזה ככה. ולפלא, שהרי ידוע בכגון דע, ציווי נישואינו רבותינו, טראכט גוט ורזיין גוט, ואחכה לבשורות טובות. קיבלתי את המכתב הזה, ידעתי שם שאני חי, טוב, המשכתי להגיד תהילים וכן הלאה, אז יום חמישי בלילה.
Schaß der Betochen ist wie sie darf zu sein, wie sie nach Neifmal Haschlich al Hashem Yehovcho, ewe huye Chalkelechot, stell der Rebischter Eche zu, de Kelim, in welches soll sein und Chal sein und herabkommende Broche, begolui betev hanire והניגלה.
עוברת השבת, ביום ראשון עזרתי אומץ וטלפנתי הביתה. אמא שלי מרימה את הטלפון, שאלתי אותה מה שלום, אבא יצא מכלל סכנה. עברתי את הכביש והלכתי במינכה שם, ואמרתי שהרבי יוצא ממינכה. נו, הראתם שטויבוס פמיר? אמרתי לו, כן, יצא מכלל סכנה. מתי? אמרתי לו, ביום חמישי בערב. אז הוא שואל אותי, מתי אתה התחלת לחשוב טוב?
Das ist doch ידוע אפילו von der alte Rebbe in Sefer Tani Kadisha. ist Megane, die Linie von Hepech Asimcho, a viele, wenn sie weiß, der Kreis hat, hat sie bis auf den Bedachschmied. Und noch mehr, a viele, wenn weiß, der Kreis hat sie bis auf den Beruchnis. Und noch mehr, a viele, wenn die sie bis an den Tag eben Zius, auf Peter Semmes.
The most important thing, and I think that's what the Rebbe gave mostly over, is the koyach of positive thinking.
Und der Rebbe אומר לי, nu, ich soll doch noch einmal nicht treffen solche Sachen, sollt wissen, alle Menschen zu trachten gut.
So that's the story. Don't underestimate the power of our words, of our thoughts. And with that, we conclude for tonight. Next week is our final lesson. Lesson 4, para and normal. Souls, angels, demons. That will be our grand finale. But remember, next week, we may be on time, maybe not. So, but thank God all for good things. So with that, I want to bless you all. I want to bench you all. May God bless you and anything which is on your hearts and stressing you and distressing you. God should bless you and ease you and shower you all with blessings, physically, materially, and spiritually. And we should only keep on seeing each other in good and happy and healthy occasions. That's our blessing for all of you. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you.